On my 73rd birthday, my granddaughter Megan slapped me so hard across the face that I tasted blood. The room went silent. 11 family members watched it happen, and not one person said a word. I stood there, holding a birthday card I'd never get to open, with a $20 lottery ticket tucked inside my purse, a ticket I'd checked that morning and discovered was worth $2.3 million. They had no idea what they'd just lost forever. Before we begin, please like this video and subscribe. Thanks. My name is Dorothy, and for 73 years, I believed that love meant giving everything you had to your family, even when they gave nothing back. I raised 4 children as a single mother after my husband passed when I was 38, worked double shifts at the hospital as a nurse, came home to help with homework, made dinner from scratch every night, and somehow always found money for school clothes, birthday parties, and Christmas presents that made their eyes light up. My daughter Sarah was my firstborn, and I poured everything into her. When she struggled in school, I hired tutors I couldn't afford. When she needed a car for her job, I took out a loan against my house. When she married David and had children, I was the grandmother who showed up. Every recital, every game, every birthday party. I was there with homemade cookies, thoughtful gifts, and a smile that hid how tired I really was. For 20 years, I watched my grandchildren grow. I babysat them when Sarah needed help, drove them to appointments when she was busy, and listened to their problems when no one else would. I thought I was building something beautiful, a legacy of love that would carry forward through generations. I should have paid attention to the warning signs earlier, the way conversations stopped when I entered a room, how my opinions suddenly didn't matter in family discussions, the gradual shift from Grandma to Dorothy when they addressed me, the way my gifts were opened with polite thank yous, but no real enthusiasm. But I kept hoping, kept believing that family meant something deeper than convenience. I was wrong. 3 weeks before my birthday, I started planning like I always did, not planning a party. I'd learned years ago not to expect that. Planning what I would bring, what I would wear, how I could make the day special for everyone else while secretly hoping someone might make it special for me. I spent days in the kitchen baking Sarah's favorite lemon bars, the ones she used to beg me to make when she was little. I bought presents for all 6 grandchildren because I couldn't bear the thought of anyone feeling left out on my day. I even picked out a new navy blue dress with small flowers, something that made me feel dignified, but not like I was trying too hard. The morning of my birthday, I woke up with that familiar flutter of hope in my chest. Maybe this year will be different. Maybe someone would remember that I loved gardenias, or that chocolate cake made me feel sick, or that I preferred tea to coffee. Maybe someone would ask about my week, my health, my dreams that weren't dead. Yet, even at 73, I drove to the grocery store to pick up ice cream for the cake Sarah said she was making. Standing in the checkout line, I saw those scratch-off tickets behind the counter. $20 felt like a lot for a woman living on Social Security, but something made me buy one. Call it intuition, call it foolishness. I tucked that ticket into my purse next to the birthday cards I'd optimistically brought to read aloud if anyone was interested. In my car in the parking lot, I used a quarter to scratch off the silver coating. My hands started shaking when I saw the numbers. I checked 3 times, then drove home and checked online. $2.3 million. After taxes, more money than I'd ever imagined having. I sat in my kitchen holding that ticket, and for the first time in years, I felt powerful. I could travel. I could buy a little house with a garden. I could help people who would appreciate it. I could finally stop worrying about money and start living. But first, I had a birthday party to attend. Megan was Sarah's oldest, 22 years old, and beautiful in the way that comes from never being told no. She'd been the golden child since birth, the first grandchild, the one who could do no wrong, the one whose every whim became everyone else's emergency. I watched her grow from a sweet toddler into someone I barely recognized. By 16, she was rolling her eyes when I spoke. By 20, she was openly dismissive of anything I had to say. Last Christmas, she interrupted my story about her grandfather, her namesake's father, to announce that old people talk too much about the past. Sarah laughed it off. You know how Megan is, she'd say, as if cruelty was just a personality trait we all had to accept. Megan lived at home despite having a college degree, worked part-time at a boutique, and spent her money on clothes and trips while expecting her parents to cover everything else. She drove a car I helped Sarah buy, lived in a house where I'd paid for several emergency repairs, and ate Sunday dinners I still brought every week. But the entitled behavior was one thing. What hurt more was the complete lack of recognition that I existed as a person. To Megan, I was furniture, useful when she needed something, invisible when she didn't. 3 months earlier, she'd asked me to loan her $500 for a weekend trip with friends. When I explained that I couldn't afford it, she said, "God, Grandma, what do you even spend money on? You never go anywhere or do anything." I should have said something then. I should have explained that my medication cost $200 a month, that my car needed repairs, that living on a fixed income meant every dollar mattered. Instead, I found a way to give her $300 and told her it was what I could manage. She took it without thanks and never paid it back. I arrived at Sarah's house at exactly 3 o'clock, the time she'd specified. Walking up the front steps with my bags of gifts and homemade treats, I could hear raised voices through the open windows. Megan was arguing with her younger brother Tyler about whose turn it was to clean up after their dog. Sarah was trying to mediate while simultaneously preparing dinner and setting up decorations that looked like they'd been thrown together in 5 minutes. "Oh, good, Mom's here," Sarah said when I walked in, but her tone suggested my arrival was another task to manage rather than a celebration to begin. The living room felt chaotic. Kids running around with tablets, blaring videos. Adults scrolling their phones. No one really talking to each other. I set my lemon bars on the kitchen counter next to a store-bought cake that was still in its plastic container. "How was your morning, sweetheart?" I asked Sarah, hoping to connect. "Crazy busy," she replied without looking up from her phone. Megan's being unable to help with anything. I looked around for ways to be useful. I started clearing space on the dining table, moving magazines and mail to make room for the food. That's when Megan walked into the room, saw me organizing, and made the comment that should have been my final warning. "Why does she always come in here and start rearranging everything? This isn't her house." She said it loud enough for everyone to hear, but not directly to me. Like I wasn't standing right there. Sarah barely looked up. "Megan, stop." But there was no conviction in it. No real correction. Just enough to claim she'd said something without actually defending me. I felt heat rise up my neck, but I smiled and continued setting the table. This was my birthday. I wasn't going to let anyone steal that from me. For the next hour, I watched my family interact around me, like I was a ghost. Conversations happened without including me. Jokes were shared without explaining the context. Plans were made for future gatherings without asking if I wanted to participate. When we finally sat down for dinner, I was placed at the far end of the table next to the 5-year-old who spent the entire meal playing games on his iPad. The slap came during dessert, after I'd watched everyone pick at the cake Sarah had forgotten to remove from its plastic base. Tyler, Megan's 17-year-old brother, was telling a story about something that happened at school. Halfway through, he used language that would have earned me a mouthful of soap when I was his age. Without thinking, I said gently, "Tyler, honey, do you think you could tell that story without cursing?" It was the kind of mild correction I'd made 1,000 times when Sarah was growing up. respectful, loving, the way grandmothers have guided grandchildren since the beginning of time. Megan's fork clattered onto her plate. Are you seriously policing his language right now? I looked at her, surprised by the anger in her voice. You just think what? That you get to control how everyone talks? That your old-fashioned rules apply to everyone else? The room went quiet. Sarah looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. David kept eating like he couldn't hear what was happening. Megan, I said softly, I wasn't trying to control anyone. I was just what? Just being yourself? Just acting like you're in charge of everyone? Just make everything about what makes you comfortable. She stood up from the table, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Her face was flushed with a rage that seemed to come from somewhere much deeper than this moment. You know what, Grandma? I'm so sick of you acting like you're the victim all the time. Like everyone owes you something just because you're old. Like we all have to walk on eggshells around your feelings. I felt my heart pounding. Around the table, 11 people sat frozen, watching this unfold like it was happening to someone else. Megan, please sit down, Sarah said weakly. But Megan wasn't finished. No, I'm not sitting down. I'm tired of pretending. She comes in here every week acting like she owns the place, criticizing everything we do, making passive-aggressive comments about how we should live our lives. And we all just take it because what? Because she's old? Because she's lonely? Well, maybe there's a reason she's lonely. The words hit me like physical blows. I felt something inside me cracking, something that had been holding me together for years. That's enough, I said quietly. No, it's not enough. You want to know what's enough? This is enough. And then she walked around the table, stood directly in front of my chair, and slapped me across the face so hard that my head snapped to the side. The sound echoed in the sudden silence. I could taste blood where I'd bitten my tongue. My cheek burned, and tears I couldn't control started falling. I looked around the table at the faces of my family. Shock, yes. Discomfort, certainly. But no outrage, no protection. No one stood up to defend the woman who had given everything to build this family. Sarah's mouth was open, but no words came out. David was studying his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. The younger children looked scared, but said nothing. And Megan stood there, breathing hard, like she'd finally gotten something off her chest that had been bothering her for years. I reached into my purse with shaking hands, passed the lottery ticket I hadn't told anyone about, and pulled out a napkin to dab at my lip. I think, I said quietly, I should go home now. I stood up from that table with as much dignity as I could gather. My cheek throbbed. My heart was breaking, but something else was happening too. Something that felt like clarity. Mom, wait, Sarah finally said, but she didn't stand up. Didn't follow me. Didn't tell her daughter that what she'd done was unforgivable. I walked to the kitchen counter where my purse sat next to the lemon bars no one had touched. As I picked up my things, I could hear whispered conversations starting behind me. No apologies. Not outrage about what had happened to their mother and grandmother. Damage control. How to smooth this over. How to move past it. At the front door, I turned back one last time. Through the archway, I could see my family resuming their conversation. Megan had sat back down. Someone was already cutting another piece of cake. It was like the slap had never happened. Like I had never happened. I drove home in complete silence, my hands steady on the wheel despite everything that had just occurred. In my driveway, I sat in my car for a long time, watching the sun set behind the oak tree I'd planted when Sarah was 10. Inside my house, I went straight to my bedroom and sat on the edge of my bed with that lottery ticket in my hands. $2.3 million. enough to change everything. But the money wasn't what mattered in that moment. What mattered was the choice in front of me. I could call Sarah tomorrow. I could apologize for whatever I'd done to deserve being treated that way. I could pretend the slap never happened, go back to bringing Sunday dinners and birthday gifts, and being grateful for whatever scraps of attention they threw my way. Or I could finally understand that love doesn't mean accepting abuse, that family doesn't give anyone the right to treat you as less than human, that being old doesn't mean being worthless. I thought about my mother, who died when I was 40, and how she always told me that the most important thing a woman could have was her self-respect. Once you lose that, Dorothy, she used to say, you lose everything that matters. I'd been losing mine for years, one small compromise at a time. That night, I made a decision that would change the rest of my life. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Patricia Williams had been handling my simple legal needs for 15 years. She was surprised to hear from me on a Sunday, even more surprised when I told her I needed to completely rewrite my will and that it was urgent. Dorothy, are you feeling all right? This seems sudden. I told her about the lottery ticket first. Her silence stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. You're serious, she finally said. Dead serious. And Patricia, I need you to help me make some other changes too. By Wednesday, I had claimed my lottery winnings through a trust Patricia helped me establish. The local news wanted to interview the mystery winner, but I declined. I had plans for that money, and publicity wasn't part of them. The first thing I did was pay off my house completely. For the first time in 35 years, I owned something outright. The relief was overwhelming. The second thing I did was research assisted living communities, not because I needed assistance, but because I wanted to live somewhere people chose to be around each other. I found a beautiful place called Sunset Gardens, more like a resort than what people typically think of as senior living. There was an art studio, a library, a garden where residents could grow their own vegetables, and most importantly, a community of people who understood that age brought wisdom, not irrelevance. While I was making these arrangements, my phone stayed silent. No calls from Sarah checking on me. No apologies from Megan. No one was wondering if I was okay after what had happened on my birthday. Their silence told me everything I needed to know. The third thing I did was establish a scholarship fund at the local community college for single mothers trying to finish their education. I'd been one of those women once, struggling to build a better life for my children while the world seemed determined to keep me down. I set aside $500,000 for women who needed someone to believe in them. The fourth thing I did was buy a car. Not a practical sedan like I'd driven for 20 years, but a beautiful red convertible that made me feel alive when I drove it. At 73, I finally owned something that was purely for joy. The fifth thing I did was plan a trip to Ireland, something I'd dreamed about since I was young, but never thought I could afford. I booked a month-long tour that would take me to every corner of the country, staying in castles and bed and breakfasts, exploring the land my great-grandmother had left behind. And the sixth thing I did was write a letter. I spent 3 days crafting it, choosing every word carefully. It wasn't angry anger that would have given them power they didn't deserve. It was clear, honest, and final. The letter explained that I would be moving to Sunset Gardens and that I would no longer be available for weekly dinners, emergency babysitting, or financial assistance. I explained that my phone number would be changing and that I would not be sharing the new one. I told them about the lottery ticket, not to hurt them, but to help them understand what their cruelty had cost them. I ended the letter with this. I spent 50 years believing that family meant accepting whatever treatment came my way, that love meant sacrificing my dignity for your convenience. Megan's slap didn't just hurt my face, it opened my eyes. I deserve better than what you've given me, and I'm finally brave enough to go find it. I mailed copies to Sarah, David, and yes, to Megan too. 3 months later, I was sitting in my new apartment at Sunset Gardens, looking out at a garden I'd helped plant, when my old phone rang for the last time. It was Sarah, and she was crying. "Mom, I got your letter. I can't believe you won the lottery and didn't tell us. I can't believe you're moving away. I can't believe you're just throwing away our family like this." I listened to her son for several minutes before I spoke. "Sarah, I didn't throw away our family. You did the moment you let your daughter slap me and said nothing." She was upset. She didn't mean it. She meant every word she said before she hit me, and you know it. And more importantly, you've agreed with her. Maybe not out loud, but your silence was agreement enough. That's not fair, Mom. What's not fair is spending 73 years giving everything I had to people who saw me as an obligation instead of a person. The conversation lasted an hour. Sarah apologized, made excuses, bargained, and finally got angry when she realized I wasn't coming back. "You're being selfish," she said finally. "This isn't the mother I know." "You're right," I told her. "The mother you knew let herself be treated badly because she was afraid of being alone. But I'm not afraid anymore, Sarah. I've learned the difference between being alone and being lonely. Being alone is a choice. Being lonely is what happens when you're surrounded by people who don't value you." I hung up and turned off the phone. That was 6 months ago. In that time, I've made more real friends than I'd had in years. I've taken art classes and discovered I have a talent for watercolors. I've traveled to Ireland and found the village where my great-grandmother was born. I've helped 12 women get their degrees through my scholarship fund, and 3 of them have already graduated and found good jobs. Most importantly, I've remembered who I was before I became someone's mother, someone's grandmother, someone's unpaid servant. My new friends here don't see me as old or irrelevant. They see me as Dorothy, a woman with stories worth hearing, opinions worth considering, and a life worth living. Last week, I got a card in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. It was from Tyler, Megan's younger brother. "Dear Grandma," it said, "I know I'm probably not supposed to contact you, but I wanted you to know that I think about what happened at your birthday all the time. I should have said something. I should have stuck up for you. I was a coward, and I'm sorry. I hope you're happy wherever you are. You deserve to be happy. Love, Tyler." I cried reading that card, but they were good tears. It told me that maybe, just maybe, I taught someone in my family that standing up for what's right matters more than keeping the peace. If you're watching this video and you're nodding along, if you recognize something of your own story in mine, I want you to know something important. It's never too late to choose yourself. For too many years, I believed that being a good woman meant accepting bad treatment. I believed that family was sacred, even when that family treated me as disposable. I believed that my role was to give and give and give, and that asking for basic respect in return was selfish. I was wrong about all of it. The people who truly love you will never ask you to sacrifice your dignity for their comfort. The people who truly value you will never treat your feelings as irrelevant. The people who truly see you as family will never stand by and watch you be abused. Age doesn't make you less worthy of respect. It makes you more worthy because respect is something you've earned through decades of living, learning, and surviving. If there's someone in your life who treats you the way my family treated me, I want you to ask yourself this question. What would you tell a friend who was being treated this way? What advice would you give to someone you cared about? Now, give that same advice to yourself. You don't need a lottery ticket to walk away from people who don't value you. You don't need millions of dollars to choose dignity over convenience. You just need to remember that you matter, that your feelings are valid, and that no one, not your children, not your grandchildren, not anyone, has the right to treat you as less than human. Walking away was the hardest thing I ever did, but it was also the most important. It taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to stop accepting unloving treatment from others. I'm 74 now, and I'm finally living my life instead of just surviving it. Every morning, I wake up in a place where I'm valued, surrounded by people who chose to be here with me. I have enough money to be generous with people who appreciate it, enough time to pursue dreams I'd forgotten I had, and enough self-respect to never again accept being treated as invisible. That's not a lottery jackpot. That's a life well lived. If my story resonates with you, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. More importantly, share your own story in the comments. Tell us about a time you chose self-respect over keeping the peace.